ولا يؤدي حقه المجتهدون الذي لا يدركه بعد الهمم ولا يناله غوص الفطن الذي ليس لصفته حد محدود ولا نعت موجود ولا وقت معدود ولا أجل ممدود. أما بعد، فقد قال الله الحكيم في محكم كتابه الكريم: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. والوالدات يرضعن أولادهن حولين كاملين لمن أراد أن يتم الرضاعة وعلى المولود له رزقهن وكسوتهن بالمعروف لا تكلف نفس إلا وسعها لا تضار والدة بولدها ولا مولود له بولده وعلى الوارث مثل ذلك فإن أرادا فصالا عن تراض منهما وتشاور فلا جناح عليهما وإن أردتم أن تسترضعوا أولادكم فلا جناح عليكم إذا سلمتم ما آتيتم بالمعروف واتقوا الله واعلموا أن الله بما تعملون بصير. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات اللهم صل. For the love of our beloved Prophet and his beloved progeny, a second loud salawat. For the hastening in the return of our beloved 12th Imam, a third final loud salawat. The topic that we'll be discussing tonight as well as tomorrow night, inshallah, is a topic titled Culture versus Religion. When you look at the world today, we immediately realize that our culture is changing very quickly at a very fast pace. And there's no doubt that many of us growing up in this part of the world as Muslims have a big challenge in front of us. That important challenge and that critical challenge is the challenge of trying to form an Islamic identity that's not necessarily based off of the Islamic culture of our parents and our grandparents who may have not been raised in this part of the world, but based off of a culture that we find around us, the culture that we are surrounded with, the culture that we breathe and live every single day. And in the process of trying to build our own identity, there are many elements of the practice of our parents that we might look at and rightfully ask, was this element of their practice, was this element of their lifestyle Islamic or was it cultural? Your parents might have told you of how they met with one another and how they got married. You might look at the way they got married and think to yourself, I can never get married like this. You might think and hear about memories of their childhood and their youth and ask yourself, how much of that was Islamic? How much of that was cultural? How much of it was directly commanded and instructed by Islam? How much of it was their cultural touch, depending on where they were living and when they were growing up? Beyond that, maybe you were growing up in the household, you saw gender roles from your father, you saw gender roles from your mother, the roles that they were playing in the household. Maybe you asked a similar question. The roles that my father plays, the roles that my mother plays, how much of it is Islamic? How much of it was their own cultural touch? Maybe when you were being raised as a child in the house, you would ask the same question. However you were raised and however you were treated, and hopefully in a good way, You might ask yourself that same question again. The way they used to treat us when we were growing up in these households, how much of it was religious? How much of it was cultural? This has led now to a whole wave, and one that I am completely on board with, of people asking questions at every step of the way. Is this Islamic? Or is this something that's infused into our practice and it's coming mainly from culture? But as we'll discuss today, this idea of separating culture and religion from one another is far more nuanced and complicated than what meets the eye. The reality is there is one important qualification that anyone who wants to separate culture from religion needs to have. With that qualification, separating culture and religion from one another becomes very easy, in fact. It becomes very simple. Without that one qualification, which we will discuss today, separating culture from religion becomes impossible. And not only will you not be able to separate between culture and religion, you will end up imposing on Islam your modern culture and the culture that you are now being raised with. It's a very nuanced topic. Beyond all of this, the one who comes forward and says, Shaykh, I want to practice Islam in a pure manner. I don't want any culture mixed in with my Islam. We have to also ask this question. Is it true that all of the cultural elements that we have in our day-to-day lives are practices that Islam is against? Or are there also cultural practices that Islam, in fact, encourages? So you see, it's quite a nuanced topic. And tonight and tomorrow night, we want to take some time to delve into this topic, inshallah. And we'll do so by posing the following questions. Number one, how are we supposed to navigate this discussion of being able to tell the difference between culture and religion? Number two, what is the most important condition and qualification that will allow me to be successful in this journey of mine? Number three, if we don't have that qualification, what type of mistakes can we make? And can we end up in the same pitfall that we criticize many of our parents and grandparents, in fact, for? Number four, what are the different ways in which culture and religion interact with one another? And is it the case that anything that is cultural, Islam came to diminish it and get rid of it? Or is it possible also that there are cultural practices that Islam sees in a very positive light? Number five, which cultural understanding as it relates to gender roles and the role of the husband and the wife in the household do we see that is understood in a cultural way? It is extremely widespread within our communities and it is wrong. And number six, and finally, how did Imam al-Hussein and Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas and Ali al-Akbar shoulder the burden of the caravan of Karbala all the way until the final moments of their life? And how did Lady Zainab come to the forefront only after these individuals were no longer there to shoulder that burden? Tonight, inshallah, we'll delve into these 6 questions with a loud salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Let's begin from here. The reality is that it's very clear that culture changes very quickly. If you look within our communities, you will find multiple generations. Yes? Every generation is different from the next generation. So I always like to say in our communities, we have 3 main generations. The first generation is the generation, I call them the chai generation. This is the generation they have to have their chai. It doesn't matter how spicy the food was. They have to have hot chai after the spicy food. Even if it burns them, that's part of the pleasure. This is the chai generation, yes? We have many of our seniors are here. Then afterwards comes a next generation, and maybe I can count myself as part of that generation. They're not part of the seniors, they're not part of the kids either. Yes? This one, they have to have their latte, yes? They have to have their cappuccino, they have to have their Americano, whatever these names are. It's all coffee and milk at the end of the day, huh? But they have these different names. If he doesn't have his latte, you can't talk to this guy. Maybe Sheikh is part of that group. Then you have a third generation. This third generation, brothers and sisters, is the most complicated of all. This third generation doesn't have chai, they don't have latte, they have matcha. The matcha generation, wama adraka ma matcha generation. This generation is on a different level altogether. Who knows what's going to happen to them? They might turn out better than all of us. They might turn out worse than all of us. We don't know. That's the reality of the generations that we have within our communities. Islam, however, taught us when you go from one generation to another generation, it is a good process to purify the cultural practices that you have. This is something the Quran talks about a lot. The Quran says when we came to the mushrikeen and the kuffar, we told them you have to follow this messenger of Allah. They said no. قَالُوا بَلْ نَتَّبِعُ مَا وَجَدْنَا عَلَيْهِ آبَاءَنَا. We're going to follow what our parents used to do. This is our culture. This is how we used to do things. A lot of things that the messenger of Allah proposed to the kuffar and mushrikeen, their response back was, we've never done this before. This is not part of our culture. This has no precedence within our community. The Quran said in two different verses, أَوَلَوْ كَانَ الشَّيْطَانُ يَدْعُوهُمْ إِلَىٰ عَذَابِ السَّعِيرِ. You want to just follow your parents blindly, even if your parents, shaitan, was calling them towards hellfire? Is that what you want to do? In another verse, the Quran said something only the Quran can say. He said, أَوَلَوْ كَانَ آبَاؤُهُمْ لَا يَعْقِلُونَ شَيْئًا وَلَا يَهْتَدُونَ. Even if their fathers didn't understand anything, these guys are still going to follow their fathers blindly. The Quran has made this very clear to us. So, someone comes forward and says, Shaykh, I really like this topic, separating culture from religion. I want to practice Islam in a pure manner. Let's go out there and start getting rid of culture. Only I want to practice religion purely. So we have to tell this person, pump the brakes a little bit. Why? Because there is one important qualification. Without it, you will never be successful in being able to separate culture from religion. If you don't have this qualification, as passionate as you are, your effort is not going to help. It actually might make things worse. So what is this qualification? It's simple. The number one and the most important qualification to be able to separate between culture and religion is a deep understanding of Islam. Let me give you an analogy. If you want to understand the difference between two things, you have to know what each of them looks like. Is that a fair statement? If you're digging somewhere looking for gold, you have to know, what does dirt look like? What does gold look like? If you don't know what gold looks like, you might come across gold and just throw it aside. You say, oh, this one's not too important. You understand the point, yes? The most important qualification, if you want to separate two things from one another, is that you have to know both of those things in and out. The culture we know in and out. The culture I live every single day, yes? Our younger generation, they have matcha every day. MashaAllah, every event they want to have now, they add matcha at the end. Sheikh, let's talk about matcha and marriage. Islam and matcha. Matcha and Islam. This is what they do nowadays, yes? So the culture we understand, no problem. Ask him 50 questions about culture. He knows. He knows what this terminology means. He knows what that means. He knows all of this, no problem. Does he know the other side though? Do you and I, even as adults, do we know Islam in and out so that I can tell the difference between these two? The answer is no, we don't. And that is why we struggle. That is why we struggle. Let me put it this way. Separating culture and religion from one another, brothers and sisters, is a very delicate process. It's like surgery. You know, when you do surgery, you have to know this part is the flesh, this part is the tumor. If you don't know the difference between the flesh and the tumor, you might end up taking out the flesh and leaving the tumor in there. So imagine Sheikh Mahdi comes forward and says, I want to do this surgery. Yes, the doctors say, no, no, no. Take those equipment out of his hands right now. He says, no, I want to get rid of this tumor. So then he sees the brain. This brain looks weird. Baba, this is the brain. It's not the tumor. We have to remove this. This human being is already dead. He can't tell the difference between the brain and the tumor. So how is he supposed to separate these two from one another? You understand this point? So the first and foremost step I have to take, if I want to be able to separate culture and religion from one another, is that I have to deepen my understanding when it comes to Islam. And understanding what Islam has to say in different issues goes beyond just knowing if something is halal or haram. No, don't make that mistake. There are times where something is halal, but it's discouraged in Islam. There are sometimes something is halal, it's encouraged in Islam. When we talk about culture and religion, you have to understand the general approach of Islam as it relates to this particular issue. Let me give you the example of gender roles. As part of gender roles, this husband, of course, is responsible to carry the burden of the financial dues of the family. He's responsible for the financial, he has to pay the bills, the financial needs of the family. Okay, this is generally how Islam wants it to be. Now question, is it possible in a particular situation, an exception? The wife says, you know what, you don't have to work, I'm gonna go work, you stay at home. Technically it's possible, it's not haram. But is that necessarily what Islam encouraged for 8 billion people? No. There might be exceptions, but you have to understand what is the general approach of Islam when it comes to this issue. That's why understanding Islam's take on these issues becomes more than just, let me look up and see if it's halal or haram. You and I, brothers and sisters, we don't have a deep understanding of Islam. This is the problem. In our communities, people think they have a deep understanding of Islam. The uncle and auntie think they have a deep understanding of Islam. Why? They say, I've attended majalis my whole life. Actually, I've attended more majalis, Shaykh, than you have hair on your head. They might be right about that actually, yes? That's possible. So, because I've attended all these majalis, I understand Islam. No, that's incorrect. This youth thinks he understands Islam. Why? Because when he was swiping on his phone, he saw a couple videos. He saw a couple TikToks. He saw a couple videos where the person inside of it started with, let's keep things real. So now he thinks he understands Islam. No, unfortunately, the elder doesn't understand Islam fully. Neither does the youth understand Islam fully. We need to invest in our understanding of Islam. Then slowly we can approach this topic of separating culture and religion. Aloud salawat, please. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So you might say, well, Shaykh, what's the problem? It's easy. Anything that is cultural is traditional. It's backwards. It's conservative. I'll just go into the faith, into the practice, look at what my parents used to do. Whatever's traditional, I say, this is cultural. No, that's not the way it works. If I don't have a deep understanding of Islam, I will end up making the same mistake that my parents were making. I will also impose culture on religion, except with one small difference. Pay attention to this. This is the most important point of all of today. If I don't understand Islam in a deep manner first, I will end up making the same mistake that my parents made, except with one small difference. My parents were taking conservative culture and imposing it on the religion. I will do what? I will take modern culture and impose it on the religion. I will take liberal culture and impose it on the religion. I will take progressive culture and impose it on the religion. Yes, that's possible. And today in our communities, it's a trend now. People running away from the first one, and I am on board with that, by the way. I know we need purification in our communities, no doubt about it. They're running away from when conservative culture was mixed with religion, but they're running and falling into a second pitfall. And now we are mixing modern culture and imposing modern culture on religion. This is the same mistake your parents made and my parents made, except from a slightly different angle. You may not notice it so much because it's not conservative. It's liberal. It's modern. It's progressive. It's forward thinking, whatever terminology we want to use. And I'm using these terms very loosely, of course. Many of these terms have very good connotations as well. I'm using it in the negative sense right now, yes? You'll end up in the same mistake. Allow me to give you 3 examples, brothers and sisters, where if I don't understand Islam properly, I can end up falling into that same pitfall. With a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. So this person, he or she grew up seeing that the value of a woman in the household was only seen in the lens and from the perspective of motherhood. The only role that the wife has to play, or the woman has to play, the only value she has is confined to what? Motherhood. This is definitely a cultural take on Islam. It's conservative culture imposed on Islam. So now I see this, and then I run towards another extreme. The other extreme I run towards, and I fall into a similar pitfall, is now I turn around and say motherhood's not important. You should always prioritize your career. Let me put it this way. It is just as cultural to say the only value of a woman comes from motherhood as it is to say motherhood is not important. You should just prioritize your career. These are both cultural understandings of Islam. One of them, it's easy for us to pick up and call out. The other one is a little bit more difficult. Why? Because one of them, conservative culture is being imposed on the religion. The second one, modern culture is being imposed on the religion. But these are both cultural understandings of Islam. Islam's approach was neither of these. It was somewhere in between these two. See, this is the pitfall we fall into. Let me go on and give you a second example. Yes? Maybe some of us grew up in households like this. It is cultural understanding of Islam to come and say, you know what? The mother in the house, she has to stay in the house 24/7 and she has no role outside of the house at all. This is a cultural understanding of Islam. This is conservative culture being imposed on Islam. It is just as much of a cultural understanding to also say the following, that the presence of the wife in the house matters just as much as the presence of the husband. No. Islam said the presence of the wife is cherished. She brings something else to the table that the presence of the husband cannot necessarily bring. You want to understand this in a little bit of a better light? By the way, I say this, husbands have responsibilities, huh? We'll leave that for another time, inshallah. But they have responsibilities. If you walk away tonight saying, oh, well, Shaykh was trying to say that men don't have responsibilities, you misunderstood the whole talk, yes? This is a nuanced talk. You want to understand this a little bit better. Islam said the wife, the woman, she can bring something to the table this man can never bring to the table fully. Her presence is a nurturing presence. Her presence brings a special warmth with it. That warmth the man cannot bring to the table. Even if he's in the house, and of course, he should be investing time in the house as well, yes? But his presence is not the same as the wife's presence. Don't equate these two. It's not the same, no. Imagine a house, the father goes on a trip for work for 1 week. Imagine this household, yes? Okay. What happens to this household? Now imagine if the mother leaves the house for 1 week. Oh, you come back. It's like the day of judgment. What happened here? Now, beyond the idea that nobody was doing the chores and so on and so forth, which, by the way, we're going to explain, is not the main responsibility of the mother anyways. We're going to get to that topic. But setting that aside, you will see this house feels colder when the mother is not around, when the wife is not around. Her presence and the presence of the man are not to be equated with one another. This is also a cultural understanding of Islam. Except in this scenario, you are imposing modern culture on religion. No, it's not the same. Let's go on to example number 3. A loud salawat, please. It's a cultural understanding of Islam to come and say, when it comes to modesty between the genders, men have no responsibility. The responsibility only falls on the shoulder of the sisters. It's a cultural understanding of Islam. This is not what Islam taught. Yes? It's just as much also a cultural understanding of Islam to come and say that therefore, however Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala obligated sisters when it came to modesty, He has to copy paste that for the brother's side. This one is modern culture you're imposing on Islam now. Do men have a huge responsibility when it comes to the issue of modesty and interaction between genders? Absolutely. Absolutely. One that, by the way, we don't talk about enough and we don't address enough. Yes? Definitely. 100%. But does that mean I should run in the other pitfall? Come and say, okay, so whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala obligated for this side, we have to obligate for the other side too. And this mindset is very prevalent in our communities. It's very prevalent in our younger generation. They immediately come and say, oh, I have to do this, so what about him? So he has duties too. It's not exactly your duty. No, it has to be the same thing. I spoke to an uncle once, yes? He felt like he was saving the day. He felt like he was solving the problems of the ummah, yes? You know, uncles sometimes just solve the problems in the house, that's enough, yes? Yes, may Allah bless all of our uncles, yes? I was talking to him, he said, Shaykh, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has obligated sisters to wear hijab. I said, okay, that's a fair point. Yes, it's part of their obligation and so on and so forth. I said, but you know, men also have a responsibility. Men also have to, there's certain things. In fact, there's more than one thing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala pointed out for men. I thought he's gonna turn around and start explaining some of these duties. He said, yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also put an obligation on men as well. Oh, I said, oh, wonderful. He understands this. I thought he was going to say they're supposed to lower their gaze. They're supposed to wear loose clothing. They're supposed to be respectful in the words that they use when they address the opposite gender. They're supposed to be thoughtful about what type of impression they're giving and what type of signal they're sending to the opposite. This whole list. All of these come from Quran and Hadith, by the way. I thought he was going to point these out. No. Look at the mindset. He said, no, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also put an obligation on men. And men also have to carry out this obligation. I said, so what's that obligation? He said he told the women to cover their hair. He told the men to cover their chin with a beard. This is their hijab. I said, excuse me, you're equating wearing hijab to having a beard? I heard another one, he came and said, Shaykh, this is an obligation, so on and so forth. Yes, instead of pointing out all the obligations that Islam actually put on men, what did he say? He turned around and he said, that's why I tell them always, if your wife wears hijab, you have to wear a long sleeve shirt. I said, uncle, you came to solve the problems of the ummah. You destroyed the whole ummah. Now you're trying to defend the sisters. You took away from their sacrifice. You equated what? Wearing a long sleeve to wearing hijab in 100 degrees Fahrenheit. This the same? You took the idea of a man who's got hairy arms and equated that to a sister who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told her, confine your beauty, don't show your beauty to anybody. Do you know how difficult that is? And many of the brothers are looking at me like, oh, it doesn't sound too difficult. That's because you're a man, you don't understand. That's very difficult. It's a huge test of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why I'll say it right here, that anytime we come across sisters in our communities and other places who have taken that step and have said, with the heat, with the difficulty, with the Islamophobia, with the idea of covering her beauty when she has the option and the free will to expose her beauty to others, and she decides not to do that, you are the pride of our community. You're carrying this banner. It's not easy. It's very difficult, especially with the political rhetoric that you hear nowadays. It's very difficult. Good for you. We are proud of you. So she's gone all the way. And then this person, he wants to come and like save the day. He says, oh no, also men have to wear long sleeve. No. What are you talking about? But where's this answer coming from? That's the point I'm trying to make. That answer is coming from a mindset of copy-paste, which is a modern culture imposed on Islam now. This is the problem that we have. So I can't just come to religion in a blind way and say, no, this is cultural, get rid of this. This is cultural, get rid of that. You know the word that people say all the time, the saying that people say all the time when they want to get rid of something that sometimes is actually very Islamic, but they want to get rid of it. They say, Sheikh, times have changed. Times have changed. Anything you point out in Islam, you say this is an obligation. Say, Sheikh, times have changed. Islam needs to evolve. Well, times have changed. That means everything changed. You don't eat food anymore. You don't drink water anymore. No, a lot of principles in life stay the same. You have to have a deeper understanding of Islam to be able to tell which one changes, which one doesn't change. The discussion around culture and religion is less emotional. It's more academic and knowledge-based. So the first thing I won't be able to do is tell the difference between that which is culture and that which is religion without this deep knowledge. There's a second problem that will also come into the picture if I don't have this knowledge. Let us recite a loud salawat, please. The second problem and the second nuance that you are missing out on with a superficial understanding of Islam is the following. You say, this is cultural. Okay, so we can get rid of it. Who said so? Islam, when it came into Arabian society and then by extension into our societies, its take on cultural issues was very different. It was very nuanced. There were cultural practices that were neutral from Islam's perspective. This is the first category. Neutral. And Islam didn't really care much. You're going to have a wedding. What type of cake are you going to order? Go order whatever type of cake you want to order. Islam doesn't care. It's a part of your culture, part of your practice. It doesn't matter. Yes? Yes? You want to have your Ka'kil Abbas, like we were saying yesterday, your Shulizar. Someone messaged me. He said, no, apparently in Indo-Pak community, the laddu is something that's very important. Yes? Apparently I got it wrong yesterday. Yes? You want to have this, you want to have that. These are neutral. Then there are practices that are cultural. Pay attention to this. That Islam encouraged. Wait, I thought culture is bad and we have to get rid of it and we have to ban it. No. That's your black and white understanding. Islam's understanding is very nuanced. There were cultural practices that when Islam came into the picture, Islam pushed that cultural practice even more. A good example of this is the relationship and the way that the people in a tribe would take care of one another. The Arab already had this. In fact, they had too much of it in some ways. When Islam came into the picture, Islam just said, listen, if your relative is doing something haram, don't support him. Outside of that, show him all of the support. Go and visit him. If he's ill, go and see how he's doing. Help him. So if he calls you for help, go running. Islam emphasizes. Islam said if you don't do it, it might cut down on the span of your life. If you don't do Silatul Rahim, you might lose important years of your life. This is agreed upon between Shia and Sunni. So then you had positive practices. When do these positive practices become positive in the eyes of Islam? Pay attention, this is technical. When that cultural practice falls under a greater umbrella that Islam has encouraged. In fact, the fact that you're sitting here today and the fact that I'm lecturing here is a cultural development. The fact that I'm sitting here and lecturing for 45 minutes, an hour, whatever the case might be, is something that is developed over time. When the 6th Imam brought people to his house and he used to tell them, you can recite the poetry for the 3rd Imam, Imam al-Hussein, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. He didn't have a 45-minute lecture in there. This is cultural. But now we say, okay, let's get rid of this cultural. No, it falls under a bigger umbrella of sharing knowledge that Islam has recommended. We're going to talk about the second category more tomorrow, inshallah. Yes? Then comes the third category. The third category is that category of cultural practices that some of them are haram, some of them may not even be haram. But they make practicing the religion difficult. They make life difficult, and generally Islam discouraged them. We have a good number of those in our communities. And tonight we'll touch on one of them, tomorrow inshallah a number of other ones. Practices that are negative, Islam said you shouldn't really have this in your household. But we have it in our households. Why? This is how everybody does it. It's a cultural understanding of Islam. So we do it and then we also impose it on Islam. So yeah, Because we're a Muslim family, this is what our fabric of our family looks like. No, Islam didn't necessarily say this. This was your cultural understanding of what Islam actually taught. So of those issues, brothers and sisters, that is a cultural understanding of Islam, is as it relates to the roles and the duties of the wife and the mother in the house. We really got this one wrong. In our households, in our communities, how do we approach this topic? And by the way, this is part of the reason why a lot of our youth don't want to get married, especially the sisters, because they saw their mother in the house. And it wasn't necessarily that the mother was mistreated necessarily or disrespected, but they saw her constantly working, chore after chore after chore. So now this young sister looks at this, I don't know if I want this. So when it came to the division of duty in the household, did Islam come and say it the way we have understood it? That, you know what, everything in the house is on the wife's shoulders. So she has to clean the dishes, she has to vacuum, she has to take care of the kids' homework, she has to drop them off, she has to make sure this email goes and that email comes, and so on and so forth. When my in-laws come, my father, my mother comes, she has to serve them, she has to do this. Maybe you made a list of 50 different items. Then you turn to this husband and you say, what do you take care of? I take care of the financial dues of the family. I do my 9 to 5. She's not doing 9 to 5. She's doing 9 to 9. You understand? She's doing a 9 to 5 and then a 5 to 9. So we say, well, this is the division that I think Islam said this, Shaykh. Didn't Islam actually say this? No, Islam didn't say that actually. In fact, when it came to this issue of division of duties and chores in the household, Islam left it up to a great extent to the wife and the husband to discuss their arrangements. What arrangement are we going to have here? And Islam made one thing very clear, that you as the husband do not have the right to approach this discussion about the arrangement that you're going to have with your wife from a perspective of the default is you're responsible for these things. Then maybe every now and then I'll come and help a little bit. Maybe every now and then I'll watch the kids for like 20 minutes. Maybe every now and then I'll thank you, and maybe that I'll forget, by the way. Maybe a little bit. The default is this is all your responsibility. Everything is your responsibility. Only thing that's my responsibility is what? Making money. No, this is not the division that Islam put. In fact, Islam drew the line where? And I'm a bit scared to even say this. Islam drew the line way before that. Forget about cooking and cleaning and things of this nature. Islam drew the line a lot before that. Islam said there are certain things that you and I would immediately, naturally put on the mother in the house. We would say this is a no-brainer. This has to be the mother's responsibility. It doesn't even make sense. And Islam said even in those scenarios, don't just walk in here assuming it's her responsibility. That's not the default. Now you want to come up with an arrangement and an understanding between the two of you? Sure. As long as you're both happy with the arrangement, no problem. But don't come in here and say, oh, this is already your responsibility. Islam pointed something out. I promise, if I tell you what that thing is, you yourself will say, but no mother would agree not to do this. She herself will want to do it. And Islam knows that. And Islam still said if she does it, she's doing the family a favor. Part of your arrangement, part of your understanding. It's not the default. What did Islam come forward and say? Islam said in these verses that we recited, وَالْوَالِدَاتُ يُرْضِعْنَ أَوْلَادَهُنَّ حَوْلَيْنِ كَامِلَيْنِ. The mothers, they want to nurse their children. If they want to nurse their children in the complete manner, it's recommended for 2 years, yes? لِمَنْ أَرَادَ أَنْ يُتِمَّ الرَّضَاعَ. Then the verses continue. It's a long verse I was reciting at the beginning of the lecture. Then what did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? وَإِنْ أَرَدْتُمْ أَنْ تَسْتَرْضِعُوا أَوْلَادَكُمْ. Oh, by the way, if you want to get someone else to come to nurse the child. So wait, this is not just default her responsibility? No. Nursing her child is not default her responsibility. A duty that I have never come across any mother who would say no to it. Yes? And Islam knows this, but Islam's making a different point. Islam is saying even when it comes to that duty that I did not explicitly tell her that that is in fact her duty. If that's the arrangement, no problem. But you know, وَإِنْ أَرَدْتُمْ أَن تَسْتَرْضِعُوا أَوْلَادَكُمْ, if you want to hire someone to nurse your child, فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْكُمْ. You know, the only situation where Islam said, no, this mother has to nurse the child is if in some shape or form, the child is going to be harmed in this process. Here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, no. The rights of children, 3-4 nights from now, we're going to talk about that, yes? We always talk about the right of parents, yes? The rights of children, we have to have a longer conversation about. Islam came and said, listen, even when it comes to that thing which no wife or no mother would practically ever say no to, it's her own child. Even there, don't approach it with the understanding, this is her responsibility. And then we have these masculine bros, and unfortunately, they've got their hands on podcasts now. This is the new bala of the ummah. They have podcasts now. So now he comes and says, Shaykh, the division we have in our household is the division of Lady Fatima and Imam Ali. Loud salawat, please. The division we have is the division of Lady Fatima. You speak about all these holy figures. We want to walk in the footsteps of Lady Fatima. Lady Fatima and Imam Ali, everything in the house, Lady Fatima said, I will take it on. Everything outside of the house, Imam Ali said, I would take it on. So that's the division we have. I think that's a very fair division between the two of us. No, you're missing a couple things. First of all, Lady Fatima had helpers in the house. Secondly, more importantly, Imam Ali was going to war. He was going to battle. Half the time he had his sword on his shoulder. What are you doing? 5 hours a day you have this gaming headset on. You're gaming. Don't come talk to me about Lady Fatima, Lady Khadija, this, yes. Imam Ali and the Prophet, half their life were in the battlefields. What's your experience with the battlefield? The greatest experience he has with the battlefield is playing Call of Duty. That's the greatest experience he's had of the battlefield. So then he comes to Lady Fatima, Lady Khadija, this, so on and so forth. No. Islam said, sit down, have an arrangement that you guys are both happy with. It doesn't also mean that the husband has to take care of everything. No, you guys have to discuss. You have to figure it out amongst yourselves. Don't approach the discussion, however, with a default that, yes, these are all your responsibilities. You know what? Every now and then I might help you out a little bit here or there. Actually, I might buy you some flowers every now and then. Actually, I might thank you every now and then. Or even that, I might forget every now and then. But, default is this is your responsibility. No, this is a cultural understanding of Islam. Islam didn't preach this, brothers and sisters. That is why you see in this caravan of our third Imam, as he's heading towards Karbala, you see a lot of the heavy weights are being taken on by the Imam himself, by Abu al-Fadl Abbas, by Ali al-Akbar. It wasn't, brothers and sisters, until after these figures were lost in the battle of Karbala that you start hearing Lady Zainab coming to the forefront and shouldering a lot of this burden. Until that point, it doesn't mean she didn't have a role. She had a role, but the Imam didn't put the burden of things on her. Yes, the night of Ashura, he turned to her, said, listen, from tomorrow, you're responsible. From tomorrow, the burden is going to be on you. And this is part of the masa'ib of Lady Zainab. No? This is part of the difficulty that she went through. But until that point, the Imam didn't come forward and say, yes, we're all here, but you go ahead and carry this burden, you go carry this difficulty. No. Every step of the way, you hear more about the difficulties that the Imam took on, that Abu al-Fadl Abbas took on, the responsibilities that they took on. Yes, when they were no longer in the picture, then you saw Lady Zainab, our Aunt Zainab, she stepped forward and she began to take on this burden. And you see this, brothers and sisters, as this caravan is coming closer and closer to the plains of Karbala. Sallallahu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Sallallahu alayka ya ibn Rasulullah. As this caravan is coming closer and closer to the plains of Karbala, the caravan had a number of stops. And you can tell every step of the way, Imam al-Hussein, as much as he knows where he's headed, as much as he knows the difficulty that's going to come his way, he is more worried about the women and the children who are in the caravan. As much as he's going on this trip and he knows that his body is going to be covered with his own blood, you find he looks back at this caravan every now and then. He sees Ruqayya, he sees Sukayna, he sees Ali al-Asghar, he sees Ali al-Akbar. Every step of the way he is reminded of the calamities and the masa'ib that his women and children are going to go through. And maybe on the 10th of Muharram, the Imam was worried about this more than he was worried about his own tragedies and his own difficulties. And the narration says they were on their way towards the plains of Karbala, and the Imam took a nap. And when he woke up 3 times, he said, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. He said it out loud 3 times. And Ali al-Akbar came closer to his father. My father, what did you see in your dream? He said, my son, I saw someone riding beside this caravan. He looked upon this caravan of ours, and he said these painful words. He said, this caravan is only headed towards death. There is no hope for this caravan. There is a very dark future awaiting this caravan. Ali al-Akbar turned towards Imam al-Hussein, my father, will we not be on the truth if we meet our death in those final moments? He said, my son, we will be on the truth. And Ali said, إِذَنْ لَا نُبَالِي. I'm not worried anymore, my father. I have nothing to worry about. But maybe Hussein in those moments was looking at his son saying, Ali, you may not have anything to worry about. But what will I do when I see your body in the plains of Karbala? What would I do when you start calling my name all the way in the front and your father can't do anything? Your father's hands are tied, a whole army in front of him. Oh, Ali, you have nothing to worry about. What about your old father? What's going to happen to the hearts of your father? This caravan comes closer and closer until they reach the plains of Karbala. But brothers and sisters, before Imam al-Hussein reached the plains of Karbala, you know who went there first? Imam Ali, the father of Hussein, went to Karbala first. The narration says on his way to Siffin, he was with Ibn Abbas. And Ibn Abbas says, all of a sudden, Imam Ali turned towards me. He looked at the dirt that he was standing on. He said, Ibn Abbas, do you know what dirt this is? Do you know what plains these are? Ibn Abbas said, no, Ya Amir al-Mu'minin, I don't know what dirt, what plains are we in anyways? He said, this is the plains of Karbala. This is the dirt of Karbala. Ibn Abbas, if you knew what was going to happen here, you would not pass by these plains without crying as hard as I am crying right now. And the tears were flowing from the eyes of Ali. Ali began to pray in the plains of Karbala. He took a nap and he had a dream. And in the dream, he turned to Ibn Abbas. He said, Ibn Abbas, you know what I saw in this dream? I saw the son of mine, Hussein, in these plains. He kept asking for help, but there was nobody to help him. فَكَانَ يَسْتَغِيث فَلَا يُغَاثُ لَهُ. Nobody was responding to his call, Ibn Abbas. And he was struggling in his own blood. His own blood had covered his body. And the angels of Allah had come from the skies telling him, Sabran, Sabran, be patient. O grandson of the Messenger of Allah, be patient. Ali says, this is the plains of Karbala. But what did Hussein say when he came to the plains of Karbala? When he finally made it to the plains of Karbala, he began asking around as it relates to the name of this land. He said, what is the name of this land? Some of them said, this name. He said, that's not the name I'm looking for. He asked again, they said, this name. He said, this is not the name I'm looking for. There's a name the Messenger of Allah has told me about. There's a name my father has promised me about. Then they said, you know, this land also has another name. It's called Karbala. And Hussein, the narration says, he took a deep breath and he said, Ardu Karbin wa Bala, the land of difficulty and pain, the land of agony and tragedy and calamity. Then he turned to his caravan. He said, my people, There's no more other places we have to go. This is exactly what Allah had promised me. This is where we have to settle down. Ha huna wallahi munakhu rukabina. This is where our horses and our animals have to settle down. Then he continued. He said, Ha huna wallahu tika harimuna. This is where our family will be disrespected. Maybe he was talking about those moments when the tents would be set on fire on the 10th of Muharram. Then Hussein continued, he said, Ha huna wallah sufika dima'una. This is by Allah the place where our blood will be shed. Maybe he was talking about the blood of Abul Fadl Abbas. And he continued with these lines, line after line, until this line that breaks your heart. He said, Wallah huna wallah dhubiha adfaluna. This is by Allah where our children will be slaughtered. And of course Hussein is referring to his 6-month-old. He's referring to those moments where Hussein holds his son Ali al-Asghar in his hands. The blood has covered the body of Ali al-Asghar. He takes from this blood and he throws it up to the sky, and none of the blood returns back to the earth. What happened to the hearts of Hussein in those moments? Hussein settles his caravan. He says, this is where the Messenger of Allah had promised me. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. Let us send our salams to our beloved Imam in the plains of Karbala. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك عليك مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. Everyone. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد وعلى أصحاب الحسين جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. رحم الله من قرأ سورة الفاتحة مع الصلوات على محمد